Okay. Oh my gosh. Even though I've heard her since Monday now, she still scares the living daylights out of me when she says that. Do put any questions in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them at the end. I brought you a presentation about the management plan to Carlisle Racecourse last year, and we were all sort of psyched up, ready to go with the management plan sort of re-edit. And I think the week after, Kerry and I met to work out how we were going to do the meetings face to face in various locations up and down Hadrian's Wall, and we came up with a plan, and we came up with when they should happen, and there should be some in the evening, and how many people we could fit in a room, and then something happened, and here we are. And so there was a slight delay on that. I think there are some positives in that. We sat around for a few months wondering what was going to happen, and then we decided, right, let's go for it. And we wanted to move forward with the re-editing of the management plan. This is Hadrian's Wall management plan. It was the first to be completely and totally online. It sits on the Hadrian's Wall Country website. It sits, in my mind, it sits at the back of it. And if you can see on the screen where my pointer is, oh no, should I do that? Jane, you showed me how to do this the other day. I'm really amazed by this. Is the laser pointer function. It's up here at the top of the page on the Hadrian's Wall Country website. So you can click on World Heritage and it brings you through to the management plan. That management plan is something that came out of necessity more than anything else. In 2015 was a big change for Hadrian's Wall in that we lost a great deal of the budget that we had previously. In fact, it was a 90% loss. And we found that we had a management plan to do, but we didn't have the budget to actually act it out or even produce it. So we were able to experiment, and we moved the entire management plan online as a delineated document. And by that, I mean that we didn't just take a document and make it into a PDF and shove it online. We actually broke it down so that you could go directly into the various pages that you wanted to do without starting on page one and scrolling your way through, because people were interested in certain sections and not in others. We took the management plan that was there before, and this is, some of you might be able to see me, some not. This was the previous management plan that was produced, and I took over ownership of in 2010, written by David Brough, who's on this call, and various others. David, you had such an ordeal bringing this management plan together, and then as soon as it was produced, the world changed, didn't it, due to elections and so forth. And we ended up with a management plan that was rather difficult then to steer through. Another reason for going online was that we were able to make a dynamic, adaptable, changeable, reacting to the environment that was around it document that we could continue to use no matter what happened. We slimmed down that document from 170 actions, I believe, that were in the previous document into something that had only 50, and we would have gone shorter if we could, under 15 objectives. How well did it do? As of last year, and nothing, not counting 2020, as of 2019, when I presented this to you before, 78.4% of the management plan was underway or complete. I am astounded by that figure, and that figure is not mine, that figure is yours, because this has been delivered in the true sense of partnership. I'm going to borrow a sentence from Jane as in her chairing role, who describes partnership and even the communities around Hadrian's Wall as the coalition of the willing. And I think that describes it fabulously. It's the energy that people are put into Hadrian's Wall that makes it work. So you can have £1 million, but I wouldn't swap that for all the energy that people give to Hadrian's Wall and do that delivery. And what does it look like in numbers? 78% delivery against the management plan that started off with no budget attached to it. So I'm amazed, and I want to pat you all on the back for that if you were allowed in a COVID environment. Obviously, I'd do it safely. Who knew that a week or so after the conference in Carlisle, that elbows would be a thing for greeting people with? Bizarre. Anyway, Some of my favourite parts in the delivery of that management plan have been, well, this is a slide of wall caps work on the ground. This is the moment where I feel sorry for Les and his 55-inch screen, because he's got this picture massive in front of him right now. And there's a wonderful picture of Kerry there admiring the excavations up on the wall in a jacket. And Gary, who we spoke to earlier on this week, the trail officer, he looks less than impressed, but it was a very wet day, wasn't it, Catherine, up on the wall when I came up to visit you that day. But some of these sites that are on this list, and I'm looking at Mucklebank Turret and I'm looking at Port Carlisle here, have been on numerous iterations of the management plan. And yet they've been tackled during this particular period when everything in the world suggested that we wouldn't be able to do these things. They've been ticked off, and I'm amazed, and I think that's amazing, a real triumph for this particular kind of management plan. These are personal things that I really admire and think have been achieved, is the use of this, the World Heritage logo. We've spoke to Mike this morning about how difficult it is to become a World Heritage site, and then we so often don't use the actual resource that we've got hold of. And it was as simple as asking people a question: why don't we use that resource? And people were just worried as to whether they were allowed to, almost, or whether they get in trouble. So I had a wonderful conversation with a lady from UNESCO called Barbara, and she was very excited that we were going to be using the UNESCO logo far more. There are rules and regulations about it, and she gave me a document that was incredibly thick, but we've managed to boil that down to a very short summary of that document, which you can find on the Simplified Brand Guidelines link. I'll make sure that we send that round as well so that you can see where that is. It's also on the Hadrian's Wall website in the management plan area. And I've seen the UNESCO logo or the World Heritage, Hadrian's Wall Country, World Heritage Site, UNESCO logo cropping up all over the place, which has just been great. And you'll find it in Newcastle Station, Carlisle Station, on the new interpretation signs, in leaflets that people are producing. People are really starting to own that brand after it being invisible. I think in 2012, a couple of colleagues from Germany went and travelled along Hadrian's Wall and found it twice. Now we find it in numerous locations identifying the World Heritage Site, and that's a sense of pride, I think, writ large in the use of that. I went and did my first degree in business, even though I was obsessed by archaeology and wanted to be an archaeologist. I realized that we needed to understand what we were doing more. So when I came to go and study, I actually did business. And one of the principles of business is this thing called Kaizen, which is, as it says here, small incremental changes. And I think that this management plan has been delivered in those small incremental changes, which all add up to major steps forward in the end. It's often, in the past, when we've had the budget and the scale to do such a thing, we've asked for the moon and the stars on a stick, and that's what we've written. And we've known that we've been able to deliver that in some respects. But the first part of that is going to find the step ladder so that you can reach up. And that's the bit that we need to write in here. And some of those objectives that haven't been delivered, so 78% has been delivered, there's a good 20% that's not, I don't think are down to a lack of willingness or opportunity to do so. I think I just wrote bad actions that were very difficult to present to a funder to get funded to then undertake. So I think we need to be clear, we need to break it down, we need to work out what it is we want to do, we need to look at what we want to achieve in our ambition, but then step back and work out what the stages are and be very practical about that, because the more we can understand that, the more likely it is to happen, it would seem. These are two questions which guide me endlessly, and I know they're important to Kerry. In 2014, we were able to do, just before the end of the Hadrian's Wall Trust, we were able to undertake quite a large consultation process. And as a result of numerous meetings up and down the World Heritage Site, 2 questions came out on top. You'd be expecting them to be something about archaeology and so forth, but those questions were, who runs the World Heritage Site? So who's in charge? What's the transparency like? Who are these people that make these decisions about the World Heritage Site? We've tried our best to be as clear as possible. This event really took on its shape as a result of that, to make sure that we put ourselves up in front of people. You'll also notice on the website that we make sure that all the minutes and the members of the groups that operate around Hadrian's Wall are all identified, so that nothing's hidden and everything's incredibly transparent, so that you can see who's doing that work along the wall. And the next was, and this was really heartening, how do I get involved? So we were really pleased that came out next, and you've lived up to that question all the way through. So thank you very much for that. A lot of what has been delivered has been a result of that question, and as a result of trying to make it easy to get involved. And I know Kerry looks after a page and tries to keep it updated as possible. The Hadrian's Wall Country Get Involved one, which is again up at the top of the page when you look on the homepage for Hadrian's Wall Country website, so you can quickly and easily get that. So that's the last management plan and where it kind of came from, how it kind of came together. I wanted to give a sort of context of how successful that management plan model has been. We weren't sure whether it would be successful in any way, shape or form when we pressed the button and sent it to UNESCO. And I think Humphrey Welfare, who was the chair at that particular time, took a massive breath, and I made him press the return button so that it was his fault, and it went off and it was done, and we weren't sure how people would receive it. I presented this to a World Heritage conference in Edinburgh, I remember, just shortly after we did that, and I was followed by another World Heritage site which had spent, I think it was a good chunk of £30,000 on their management plan, and it was very heavy and very thick, and they knew exactly how much it weighed. We set ourselves a budget of £3,000 to bring this management plan together, and we spent 1,500. I'd rather spend money on doing than saying what we're going to do, and hopefully that's been justified by the delivery that's happened during the course of this particular management plan run. So far, just to give you an idea of how the budget's going, we don't have any budget associated to the new management plan at all, because given the year that we've just had, we gave away our entire management budget, which is £70,000 for the year, which includes my wages and then a little bit to do action. We gave that away to partners for projects so that we could get projects going during this down period that would take us out of COVID, and been able to lever in at a ratio of 5:1 money on behalf of partners, which has been terrific. But it has meant that we're going to be doing this management plan through strong will and the support of Newcastle University. So thank you very much, guys, for supporting us all the way through. So far, we've spent £600 on putting a patch in the management plan website so that it would be updatable, because apparently in 5 years, it turns a website into a geriatric, I'm told. So yeah, we needed to prop up the website. So far I've spent £600, but I know that the university have supported us with this online consultation. And so thank you very much to that, for that WallCap team, particularly Rob, for negotiating that. So why do we need a management plan? And this kind of follows on from Mike's presentation earlier on this morning, for anybody who was able to see that. As you can see here, this is taken from the UNESCO operational guidelines, and the key parts are highlighted in the dark bit. It's an appropriate management plan or management system, documented management system. It should specify how the OUV of the property is preserved. We talked about the outstanding universal value this morning. For anybody who didn't, it's basically the essence of your World Heritage site in its authenticity. I'm going to have to look that up because I've completely gone blank on what the OUV includes. But it's basically the essence of your World Heritage site written on 2 sides of A4, because apparently I'm going to have to look back. Do apologise, guys, for that. And for me, the last part is incredibly important. It should be done through participatory needs. Yeah, so it should be done together. this management plan. So it's not done to, it's done with, alongside with people. What does it mean to contain? Well, protection, obviously, protection of that outstanding universal value is key. The understanding should be in there, because understanding in a way is protection, because if you understand something, you have a relationship with it, you're more likely to protect it, to value it. And the other sense of valuing is that sustainable development of that. I have no problem, as Mike said this morning, about talking about money as a value. I know some people don't like to bring that up, but value is important in this day and age, and something that is well funded, something that is numerically valuable, is likely to be protected as well at the same sort of time. So I think economic development fully has its place within a management plan, if you're to take it through into the future with as many partners as possible. What should the management plan cover? Well, in UNESCO's mind, ideally, it should be a management plan for the frontiers of the Roman Empire. We saw this map earlier on today. Mike showed it, this entire 2nd century frontier of the Roman Empire. There's a problem with that. It's a bit big, isn't it? I mean, it circumnavigates the Mediterranean and goes all the way round, including deserts, rivers, etc., etc. So we can't really make a document. You can make a document, but it would be meaningless because it would be so bland and so averaged out across all those different scenarios that it wouldn't be of any use whatsoever. So maybe we need to do it for the artificial boundaries, the Hadrian's Wall, the German Limes, and the Antonine Wall. Maybe that's what we should do it for, and that is extremely possible. And just before the COVID issues, we sat down as partners across all of those frontiers and tried to work out how we synchronized our management plan reviews. The problem is, though, that each one of those different areas has different planning laws and different legislation. That makes it quite awkward to make a unified document, but it doesn't make it difficult to make a suited set of documents. So things that have common titles, common areas, common identities. But even, I mean, I know that our German colleagues are on the call right now. There's 4 federal states, the Länder within Germany. Each one of those 4 different states has different legislation and planning issues. So it's not just 3, it's 4, 5, 6 different issues that you've got going on there. So we're aiming towards a synchronized, suited set of management plans, maybe for this set of artificial boundaries along Hadrian's Wall. So I think we're on safer ground talking about a management plan for Hadrian's Wall. And that's why we've always kind of focused on us directly, because that means that we can draw up something which is useful and practical for us. Here's Hadrian's Wall. I'm not going to ask everybody to tell where these parts are because we're not all in a room and it's very difficult to do. But Banks turrets out in the central sector, steel rig, I'll keep going on, Hedden, Chester's, etc., etc. Corbridge, actually, Carlisle. And this is all Hadrian's Wall, Hadrian's Wall, Hadrian's Wall, Hadrian's Wall, etc. Hadrian's Wall itself is incredibly varied, but at least we can work with that and work with that commonality. What should a management plan include? Well, these are the component parts. Hum and I in 2015 went right the way through the operational guidelines and tried to work out what it was that was the absolute essence of that documented management system. And we boiled it down to this. We found out that management plans were very much like Cheshire weddings. Each one needed to be bigger, brighter, and more colourful than the one that had preceded it. And we kind of wanted to rewind that to make it more of a funders document, an action plan, something that we could all get hold of. So here are the component parts. And as you can see, highlighted in the middle of that is the outstanding universal value in the Hadrian's Wall significance section, making the cornerstone of all the other sections that go into that. What's normally not found in the management plan is the bottom line, which is the supporting information. But because we have an online management plan, we can try and park all the resources that one might need all in the same place, like a one-stop shop. Recently, UNESCO as a whole have come up with their 17 sustainable goals, and we will try and work those into our management plan. I don't think that's going to be terribly difficult because we've always thought about Hadrian's Wall as a holistic landscape region And we know that to protect one part, we need to honour and represent another. And you can see here this range of goals that UNESCO are setting themselves up to deliver. This is UNESCO, remember, so includes not just their heritage side with the World Heritage List, but also their science and education outcomes. So you'll see things on here that you might think are irrelevant, but I think we're actually touching on through the World Heritage site. And I think we should turn our eyes to and try and do what we can, because some of these are real world outcomes and challenges that we're facing. And I think World Heritage needs to face those real world challenges as much as possible. And I think we are doing. So I think we can map these back to some of our World Heritage outputs that we've currently got. And then we've set ourselves the tone for our own management plan. And hopefully these are agreeable to everybody. I'll quickly go through them. I think that the management plan should be deliverable, practical, transparent, engaging, accessible, should be value for money, should be adaptable, should be conversational, should be focused, and above all, that bottom one should be incredibly useful. In 2010, I got this management plan, which was so well thought out and so well written, but because the world had changed, I had to babysit a document which was incredibly difficult to deliver. I can't waste my life looking after a document like that. I need something that's going to be useful for all of us. We need something that's going to be useful for all of us. So useful was definitely on that list. At the same time, it should be strategic, but it should definitely be of value at a grassroots level, because that's where some of the most important delivery is happening in this particular day and age. I talked about wanting you to press that link, and the Newcastle University have managed to provide us with a consultant, an independent consultant, who's going to take a look at the responses to that link. But the areas that I want to concentrate on to make that easy are the bits that are outlined here in red. So it's the policies and actions that we could do with reviewing. I think the structure is fine. Everybody seems to be happy with the way that it's structured at this moment in time, but we need to update those areas in red. Also in red at the bottom is the supporting information, which I think we need to make sure that we really capture that one-stop shop offer that the online provision gives us. How will we do that? I've carefully constructed this exquisite diagram that you see in front of you, and we are currently about here. This is the online consultation, so we're kind of halfway through. The thing is that I started doing that about 18 months to 2 years ago, the bit up there, but we're down at this particular point. There's an important part just here called stakeholders, which sits out to one side. Stakeholders are often listed whenever you undertake one of these types of projects, but it's important also to acknowledge their influence and interest. And I think one of the great outputs of this particular period of the management of Hadrian's Wall is when looking at the influence and interest, we saw that local authorities were incredibly influential on the World Heritage site, but due to what they perceived it to be, often had less interest than they should. And that interest has been increased and taken on a journey, and now they're fully embedded inside the World Heritage site, which has put us in a very robust position within the real world. And that economic development argument is incredibly important for Hadrian's Wall. It's been taken seriously. People have been given permission to play with the World Heritage site and to use the World Heritage site to its advantage. Back to this sustainable development, back to this value, back to this, we're getting it taken seriously. We're getting conservation as a result of bringing in partners from outside the sector. Other people that have got influence and interest, you might think that community have got incredible interest, but very little influence. And that's another area that we've been taking on a journey to make sure that that influence is recognised and fed into the system. Answering those questions that came out of the 2014 sort of consultation, how do I get involved? Looking at the stakeholder analysis, looking at the influence and interest, and saying who do we want to take on a journey, who do we need to move up, and the influence of our community is incredibly important, and that's hopefully something that you feel has been not perfect, but taken on a journey to make more influence to match that level of interest that you all show in the World Heritage site. you can do that, and sometimes you find out that you've got people with huge influence that you don't necessarily want. That's not the case for Hadrian's Wall, but in some cases you can then make a strategy to decrease and increase interest and influence with their various stakeholders. So I'd recommend anybody who does a stakeholder list, which is what people often do, to also then look at their plot on an X and Y axis, their influence and interest. It's incredibly important to see where you want to take people. The first consultation before we look at that was done by the chairs of the delivery groups and some other specialists that were in the area, just to look at where we were with the management plan, almost peer appraisal of where we were with that management plan. And so they were locked in a room at Holt Whistle Station and not let out for the entire day until they'd been through every single line of the management plan. And the agreement was that it seems to be fit for purpose and it seems to be working. And they are the people that came up with what have we delivered, where have we gone, where have we seen, what would we like to do. But the real consultation, as I say, comes out here in this second consultation phase. Unfortunately, that consultation phase ends on the 8th of March. So we need to be a bit quick on getting that link out there and getting you involved in doing that. Once we've got your responses back via the consultant from Newcastle University, I'll have a go at drafting those into policies and actions for you so that we can see what that might look like inside a new management plan. We'll get that up online and we'll put it up for a period of time, and I'll make sure that you get to know about that. And then you can give me the feedback in this latter consultation period as to whether you think that matches the aspirations that we've got, and whether those aspirations are correctly communicated in practical, deliverable, useful, remember all those words, ways that take us forward, that makes it seem like it's a deliverable plan. Once we're all happy during that particular period, then we can press the button. And the best thing about it all being in pixels rather than pages is that doesn't take terribly long to do, so we can turn that around quite quickly. I've not put a date, I've not put a time line on this. I did previously, and I've had to alter it pretty much on a weekly basis as the world has kind of changed around us. So I've refused to put a timeline on it right now. And the other thing that we've got are the local authorities. Remember back up here when we looked at the stakeholders, the local authorities are very keen to put alongside that a 10-year investment strategy. And I'm very keen to write the management plan alongside what is a 10-year investment strategy for the wall as a whole, so that the two documents reflect each other. So I'm also working alongside that investment strategy, which is about economic development in the strongest possible sense. So what do I want you to do next? Well, this is the link that will be coming out to you. It will come into the chat, I think, at some particular point. And the closing date is very soon. I do apologize for that. But that's the time that we've got with the consultant to do that. And the last part of this, because I want to make space for a bit of a comfort break and also some questions, is I just want to take you through the objectives in the management plan, just to start you thinking about the areas that the management plan operates within. So we've got, and I've tried to make a list to explain what these are. Objective 1, can you see objective 1? Does that come up? Objective 1 is management. Mike mentioned that it's essential to have strong, good management of a World Heritage Site. It's an essential criteria for UNESCO, and it's a key part that we've got to have. The boundaries, they will be clarified wherever possible. They won't be changed because basically we can't afford a resubmission to the World Heritage Site. It's top side of £1 million for a resubmission and many, many years. So clarification is okay, but resubmission of completely new boundaries would be quite a big, big, big task. Objective 3 deals with protection, as you'd imagine, and that reflects national policies on the World Heritage Site. So Mike tends to deal with that particular area, and we don't tend to see a lot of change and a lot of action in there because it depends on those national policies changing and the actions that we need to take thereof. Undesignated, it's trying to bring forward the other parts of the World Heritage Site by association and look after those different areas within the World Heritage Site and from the archaeological community's point of view. So I think Gillian earlier on in the week mentioned things about the vallum and so forth, making sure that all those areas that aren't currently designated are also considered and given weight in whichever way we possibly can. Metal detecting is given its own line under 5, whether that's through the requirement that we need to give it more clarification, or we need to have a program of interaction. Sometimes the argument is that we can talk to people who are good metal detectors, and the people that are going to be bad metal detectors are going to be bad metal detectors. We still need to try to make steps to include metal detecting in a positive way on Hadrian's Wall. Risk preparedness. I used to get obsessed by this particular area of the management plan for quite a long time, but I used to obsess about planes crashing on the World Heritage Site and things of that nature. We even proposed to have a scenario where where people come along and act out like dead bodies laid around the wall and stuff, and people would ring Mike Collins in the middle of the night to say, "There's an helicopter landed on the wall." We didn't plan for a COVID outbreak or anything like that, but no doubt that will go into the new plan. But this is all about making sure that the OUV is not impacted by one of these dramatic risk moments. Climate change also pops in there in that sense. Conservation of archaeological sites. I think that's understandable. It's the key word inside that, if you look inside that, objective 7 is monitoring. And I think that's where a lot of the monitoring strategies were housed, and we go forward. Rural land management. The wall is a 24/7 monument. It operates all the time. It shouldn't be a pain in the bum for anybody, basically. It should, wherever possible, be a positive influence on people's lives. And I'm very happy for the wall to be a stock-proof fence or wall, stock-proof barrier, where it needs to be a stock-proof barrier, when it doesn't need to be Hadrian's Wall in that sort of sense. It has many different tasks to fulfill. And in our rural communities, we need to allow rural activities to take place. It's not static. It lives within a modern world of the 21st century. And I would like that to be, Hadrian's Wall to be useful as a field boundary, as a lead to operating a guest house business or a bunk barn, or even selling honey. All those different areas that people might want to engage with that. But it's a lot of conversation to try and unpick that. Archaeological research. We have, through the archaeological community, the research framework, which guides us as we make decisions about where Hadrian's Wall should go next. It's a list of things that we know, but more importantly, a list of questions that we don't know, which we're then able to focus on and to look and research further in that direction. Currently, at this moment in time, that archaeological community are doing a peer appraisal of where that framework is, in the hope of producing a new framework in the next year or so. So watch this space, but we're guided by that information in there. Then it's transport. I expect to hear a lot about electric vehicles. I expect to hear a lot about electric vehicles. I expect to hear a lot about cycling pop up in there, but also the bus and the train I mentioned in section 10. Interpretation on sites. We need to be brilliant. We are brilliant, and we need to maintain those high quality standards. We need to share the most up-to-date information. Sustainable development and prosperity. It needs to be real. It needs to talk about jobs and skills and the futures. Is there a future in the past? I think there definitely is. I've made my future from the past all the way through, and I would love to give people that opportunity. It's important for Hexham, Holtwhistle, Brampton, Carlisle, Newcastle to honour that. And so that's an important trait. Our objective 12 has really taken off and flown over these last couple of years. And last slide, engaging with communities. Yes, please, always. If not, we're not doing it right. Yeah. Why else would we be here? It's responsibility. Hadrian's Wall is a place to live, work, and visit. It's all those three at once. So live, work, visit is something that I mention all the time. All of that's important. We're the current garrison, 1900 years on, we're the people that are here. And we are all a community, because a community is a collection of people with a like-minded need. Yeah. Marketing, making sure that we honour its tourism roots in that sense. And the one that I think we've really struggled with over the last couple of years, and this is where I've written terrible actions, I think, and that's why they've not really been delivered, is in the education side of things. We really need to get a handle on our education side. We're very lucky for Hadrian's Wall to be mentioned in the national curriculum by name, but it would be great if we could explore that and explode that and go a bit further and see where we go. And that's lifelong learning to make sure that we are impactful on people's lives. And so my last slide takes you back to that link again. I'm going to keep mentioning that link all the way through. Please jump on that link. Please tell me what you think. Hopefully I've given you a bit of background, a bit of context before you press on that link. And then we're going to have a conversation later on when I've had a go at making some actions, feed it back out to you, and you tell me what you reckon, because it's our plan. We deliver it. I want to say that none of the outputs in this, Jane, have been smart. We are the only non-smart action plan in a way. And that's because in the past, when the actions were identified to a delivery agent, everybody else sat back and went, oh, well, they'll do it. When we took away the delivery agent, everybody did it. And I've had people from the bus, from the railway, from a community group, all get involved and quote the management plan back to me. And that's been such a compliment and just been exactly where this management plan should sit. So thank you very much to everybody for listening. Thank you very much for everybody for delivering. And thank you very much for the part that you're going to play over the next few months in bringing forward a new management plan. And thank you very much for being the best people that you can. So I'll shut up now and answer any questions. Is that okay?